It's one of the most highly anticipated sessions of the day.
Oh yeah, highly anticipated. It's Saturday morning. What else would you want to do? Right, Greg?
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to talk insurance on a Saturday morning?
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We'll give about 10 more seconds here. We have 16 people. I know there were 23 that signed up, so just in case. Welcome to everyone who's joining us here on a Saturday morning or afternoon here for the 2021 version of our USCA Members Assembly webinars. I think we're steady at 16. So once again, let's begin. So first of all, on behalf of USA Curling, thank you all for joining us here on a Saturday afternoon to talk a little insurance. It's a very important topic, obviously, for every club, and risk management is an important focus of our organization to our members, both individually and at the curling club level. So I have with us Chief Financial Officer Eric Gleason with USA Curling, and a good friend of mine, Greg Joly, Senior Vice President of Sports with Loomis LaPann. So thank you both for joining us. We'll be covering a lot of topical information about insurance. We're not going to go into a deep dive, but obviously we are always available as a staff to answer questions and get on a call with Greg or Eric or myself or whoever we need to. But with that, we're going to talk a little bit about general liability, how it applies to the club, participant legal liability, and participant accident. So with that, I'll briefly turn it over to Eric, and let's go.
Sounds good. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad I was able to join this panel and get in front of all of you. I've been with USA Curling since February of this year, and prior to that was with USA Rugby and US Soccer. And in both of those roles for the last 12, 13 years, I've managed risk management at both of those organizations. So really looking forward to working with all of you and working with our risk management plan here. Steve and Greg have done a really good job to get me up to speed and understand the current policies we have in place. We're going to present some slides to you and show what changes we have for this year. They're positive changes, so I'm happy to present those. And then we'll hand it off to Greg, our great broker here, to dive into some deeper detail around those policies. And then we'll open it up to any Q&A that you guys have for us. So, Steve?
All right.
Want to throw the slides up? We can get started.
All right.
Perfect.
Pause that. Can we do this manually? There we go.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, so we'll quickly address the slight changes to the insurance program we have for you for this upcoming season. And then Greg will go through in more detail our GL participant accident policies. And then we'll talk through how you as a club and as a member will enroll this year. You know, we had talked about previous changes to that enrollment process, but you're really not going to see too much change for this upcoming season. So we'll talk through that. The D&O option for you, certificates of insurance, how you can get those from us, and then how you would report any incidences. So we'll go from there. So next slide, Steve.
Yep, one comment. We know that you're all going to have questions. Feel free to put them in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen, and we will definitely address them after the presentation. So thank you.
So I know in previous years, it was an additional charge per member that we would ask the clubs to collect or pay through to get the club insurance side of our general liability policy. The change that we've implemented this year is that within the member due of $34, which is unchanged this year from last year, that now includes your club GL. So general liability for all the clubs is included in the general membership annual premium payment of $34. There were some questions around well, do I need to get a club payment in right away, even though I don't have a full roster yet to be part of that club insurance? And the answer is no, for the most part. If you are already a club in good standing, then you're automatically in our insurance policy for this year. And then as soon as possible, get us your current rosters. We'll get an invoice out to you for the $34 per member, just to get everything current and updated for the upcoming season. If you are a new club, then we'd love to get a roster from you sooner than later, or maybe even an estimate of what you think that roster could look like, just so we can get you in the system and get you as part of that club insurance policy. And so ultimately, since it's included in there, it could be a cost savings to you as a club, since it's just part of the regular $34 that you've been collecting from all of our members. Our GL limits here, which we can run down, I believe are all unchanged from previous years, and Greg, jump in if I'm wrong, but
Yeah.
Policy runs December to December. Go ahead, Greg.
Correct. December 1, 21 is the renewal date to December 1, 2022.
Right. Got a $2 million coverage per occurrence and a $5 million general aggregate. And that general aggregate also is not just per the policy, but it's per club. Correct, Greg?
That is correct. It's on a per club basis. So every club has an ag of $5 million. And I mean, you should not exhaust that type of limits of insurance on an annual basis. That's a lot of limits.
Well, let's hope none of us exhaust up to those sort of limits, but it's nice to know that it's there as a backstop. Personal and advertising injury is also 2 million, product 2 million, damages 300,000, medical expense limit 5, and then sexual abuse 1 million, participant legal liability 1 million. So we've gone back and we've done a comprehensive review. We think these coverages are adequate, if not beyond adequate, to meet the needs of our entire organization and all of our member clubs.
Yeah, this policy is when we underwrite national governing bodies, NGBs, all the policies have to be approved by the United States Olympic Committee. So the USOPC takes a look at these policies, goes through them, and makes sure that we have the proper endorsements in place, the proper coverages in place, and all these policies meet all the USOPC requirements. In addition, this year, we have broadened the coverages on the general liability insurance program. And what we've done in years past, the coverages were related to curling related activities only. This year, we're going to do curling club activities. So it broadens, your coverages. If you're going to have different type of events, social gatherings, fundraisers, that type of thing will also be covered this year. If you're an active club, a very active club that leases their facility and has many different events like weddings or card shows or whatever, we probably will introduce it's called a TULIP insurance program. It's a tenant user liability insurance program. And I think clubs will have the opportunity when you lease your venue to someone and they sign a contract, part of that contract will include insurance that the leaser can pick up as part of that contract. And then if there's claims it'll fall under a separate policy and won't affect the master policy for USA Curling. But we're going to get more information out to those type of clubs that have those facilities, and it may be of great interest to that for that club to have coverages under a different policy.
And that would only apply to non-curling, non-club curling type activities. If you're having an event at your club that's a that's a fundraiser related to the club, or having a board meeting or a members meeting or a barbecue or whatever else you want to do at your club that is related to supporting the club activities and the club membership, then that's all going to be included under our general liability that you'll currently have.
And in addition, we've had a lot of questions regarding liquor liability. And this policy will provide host liquor liability. And host liquor liability means if you're in the business of not selling alcohol, then you have host liquor liability. And should you have a claim, the policy would respond. But the laws and the license, the liquor licenses change in state by state. So what we recommend is that if you're required to have a liquor license at your club, check with your state, check what the requirements are for insurance in regards to that license. And there's standalone policies for liquor liability. Again, you would have host liquor liability under our program, under United States Curling Program. But if you're required to have full liquor liability, that we don't know. It could vary from club to club or state to state. Again, this general liability policy will cover your club and your members. Now, a lot of times, if you are what we would look at insurance-wise, a brick and mortar club, you own your own club, you could have liability under a business owner's policy, a BOP, and part of that policy would cover your contents, would cover your building, and would cover liability for slips and falls, let's call premise liability. Under our policy, we'll pick up your premise liability. You don't need liability under a separate policy. We're going to pick up premise liability, and we're going to pick up participant legal liability. And that is the club's largest exposure. That's your biggest exposure, is liability from an accident that may occur on the ice. Now, most of these business owner policies don't cover participant legal. The liability for those policies is strictly premise, slips and falls. So again, we'd like you guys to check with your insurance broker or check with your policy to make sure that the liability you have is the correct liability for the exposures that you have. And if you don't need the liability, that could save you thousands of dollars under your current business owner's policy, because it's provided to you under the USA Curling master policy. And that could save you some money as a club.
Greg, before, and I know we said we're going to wait to do Q&A at the end, but I mean, maybe we jump in, Steve, with the one question that was just brought up by Jeremy, is that, Greg, do you see any differences in our GL coverage if you're arena club versus a dedicated facility club?
No, there's no difference whatsoever. Both policies apply to member clubs, so it doesn't. There's no difference between the two clubs, and the policy applies. All limits, conditions, terms are the same for both.
So what we could do is we could give an arena club the COI, certificate of insurance, that they could provide to the arena owner and make sure it meets all the requirements.
That's correct.
Yeah, we can go from there. Okay, good.
Okay. Do you guys want to move on to the participant accident? Is there anything else, Steve, that you want to?
Yeah, I think we move on to participant accident, and then there's a question on D&O that we can get to later.
Okay. All right. So this is a separate policy. The participant accident policy is a separate policy to the general liability policy. And what it does, it covers all USA Curling members during activities that are related to curling. So if somebody is going to a bonds field and they happen to slip and fall going into the rink, and they break a leg, there's coverage. If they're on the ice and they're injured, we'll pay for that that medical as well. What this is, it's secondary medical insurance. So if you have primary medical, obviously that insurance will pay first. If you do not have primary medical insurance, then this insurance becomes primary up to the limit of $50,000. And also what this insurance can do is that it can, if you have primary and you have a huge deductible or a copay, it can pay any out-of-pocket expenses that you may have once you accumulate $1,000 in paid medical bills. And that is the deductible. So that deductible, what that means is that deductible can be satisfied by other insurance. So for example, you have a $10,000 ACL injury, and you have a huge deductible on your policy or a copay of 20%. What we'll do is we'll say, give us the medical bills that were paid to satisfy that deductible, and our your out-of-pocket expenses, your check, and then we'll reimburse the injured party for that out-of-pocket expense. So really, if you have primary medical insurance, there's no deductible on this policy. The deductible applies if you do not have primary insurance. And the reason it's there is that we don't want someone that doesn't have primary insurance to say, oh, I need physical therapy or whatever the case may be. I slipped and fell, and they start using this insurance. And all of a sudden we accumulate all these $1,000 claims and our rates start going through the roof. So we think it's only fair that someone who doesn't have insurance, primary medical, and they have to pay $1,000 out of pocket, that's not bad to get up to $50,000 in paid medical expenses. So that's why that deductible is in place. We want these people to have some skin in the game, and we want to be able to make sure we can keep our premiums and our rates in check. Again, the policy has an accidental death benefit as well of $10,000. And again, that's not life insurance. It's not sickness. It's a death benefit for accident only. And then it has an accidental dismemberment benefit as well for $10,000. Steve, you want to?
Yeah, so well, to how to enroll club and members. If you, like we mentioned before, if you're a USCA member club in good standing, this coverage exists for you right away, right off the bat. And enrolling members is as simple this year as sending us your membership roster on an Excel spreadsheet as we've done in the past. So it really is that simple.
Okay, directors and officers liability. This is an optional program. The insurance carriers won't write a master policy for directors and officers coverage. Everybody has different board members, have different bylaws, and these policies have to be written on an individual club basis. Excuse me. It protects you. It protects board members, committee members, employees. Should somebody question your rules, your regulations, most of the policies have $1 million limit. They do now come with a deductible, probably $1,000 to $5,000 deductibles, retentions. But these are probably defense cost policies, is what we look at them as. Not too many times people are going to ask for any monetary. They're going to look to see, why can't I participate? I'm going to question your rules. I'm going to question this. And usually what happens, you have to hire an attorney to defend you. And that's where the legal bills can add up. And then it may protect somebody else. If they do go after the club, it'll protect, board members you know, that won't have to force to pay damages out of their own personal assets. So it all depends how involved your club is. A lot of the rules and regulations that you follow are USA curling rules. So there's not a huge exposure there. But if you guys are, have certain type of memberships and some things that people could question, it's probably a good idea to look at a D&O policy. They range anywhere from, $750 to $1,500 on an annual basis. There's been a lot more claims on these policies. As you know, the legal climate is tough out there. So those premiums have gone up. But again, we'd be more than happy to talk to any club if they have any questions about D&O coverage. And it's basically what we do is we forward you an application. You complete the application. We get you a quotation and you decide if you should want to bind coverage. Then we can bind accordingly.
I mean, having a D&O policy, whether it's one that we can offer you or one that you get elsewhere, I think is just good governance for running any business. And, I don't think anyone wants to be elected or volunteer to go sit on a board and then something does happen where legal liability pops up, and then you don't want anyone to feel like they're personally liable. So D&O just protects everybody from that. So it's always good governance to have a policy in place.
It is. You're right. It is.
Greg, I just wanted to jump back. So there was a question on, so a club hosts a Learn to Curl event. Those are populated by individuals, not club members. And the question is, are those individuals covered? And the answer is yes. And do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, we've done it. We understand that, clubs want to promote the sport, and we're all for that. And what we've sort of like classified under insurance as these Learn to Curl people as, they're Learn to Curl members. So we've given them a status on the insurance side, and we understand that they're going to be out there, and that's just part of how you're going to promote your sport. And yes, they are covered under both the general liability and the participant accident. Do you want to go to the certificates of insurance?
Sure.
Okay, so certificate of insurance, these are, certificates that we can issue on your behalf to a landlord should they require proof of insurance. Most of the certificates of insurance today is if you're going to lease a facility, your landlord is going to want to be named as an additional insured. And what that gives them is that if there's a claim, there's something that happens and you were negligent and they were brought into a lawsuit, then our policy will cover the landlord as well as the club named on that certificate of insurance. So, in the good old days, we used to say, we just wanted to send out a certificate showing proof of insurance. We had insurance and the landlord has insurance. So if there's a claim, the preference at that time was, we'll cover our insurance, our claim with our insurance, and you cover your claim with your insurance. But those days are pretty well done. So they are looking for additional insured status, and we can provide that to them so you can fulfill the agreement on the contract you have and lease the facility. Again, if you don't have to, we don't want to list anybody as additional insured if we don't have to. But if we have to, that's part of what the program offers, and we can get that certificate of insurance for you. And also for clubs that have outside subcontractors that do work at their clubs, whether it be catering or whatever, it may be a good idea for you guys to look at what these people bring, what exposure they bring to your club. And you may be able to get a certificate of insurance from them, naming your club as additional insured. Something should happen due to their negligence, then their policy will respond. And then, your policy, the USA Curling policy, will not have to. Again, depending how you guys used outside, subcontractors. The next slide is requesting a certificate of insurance. And again, there's the certificate of insurance request form. You're going to contact USA Curling. They can get you that form. You complete the form. It goes back to USA Curling. They will send it into us, and we can issue you a certificate of insurance per your request. Obviously, we'd like some time on these to get these issued properly to make sure there's no errors. But it need be if you're having an event or you need something, we can probably get that certificate to you in 24 hours. And that is a certificate of insurance request form.
And I'll vouch for that because we did just basically turn one over in 24 hours. So they can work very fast, but I'd rather not put that much stress on Greg's staff. So give us a little time and we'll deliver.
Steve, is that form available to request a COI online on our website?
I'm actually working on two separate things. The form can be available, but I'm also looking at a kind of an active fill out where, the request would then go to me and Greg's support immediately. So kind of speed up the process a little bit.
Perfect.
The next slide is a sample certificate of insurance, and this is what a certificate of insurance looks like. It's going to show that the named insured. It's going to show the policy dates. It's going to show the insurance company. It's going to show the limits of insurance. And then in one of the boxes there, where it says event, date of event or location, it'll list the additional insured, whoever wants to be listed as additional insured or the certificate holder. We can list in those boxes, and that's all your landlord will need. And once they get this certificate of insurance, they'll have it in their files, and they'll just ask for the renewal upon the renewal date. And most of the limits that we have with the 5-2, excuse me, have met everybody's requirements. We haven't had anybody turn down a certificate of insurance with these limits to date. So we've got plenty of limits of liability. And I think that your landlord would be more than happy to have these type of limits in place. Next slide, please. Incident reporting. This has become more and more important. We need to have, if there's an incident, we need information on that incident. What happens is all this is very important because it takes a while for these incident or these claims to take place, to generate when there's an incident, because there's certain statutes and states, and we could have an incident tomorrow at a club. We may not hear about this thing for 2 years. And because all of a sudden the statute said we got 2 or 5 years to litigate, and all of a sudden somebody says, I slipped, I fell, my shoulder's never been the same. I'm now going to litigate, and we're going, what took place? What do we know anything about this? And that's why these incident reporting is very, very important. So we have some background on what we will require if this is a liability case. So, should you be involved in an incident, and this is for the club, make sure that you can report it, have something that we can have in place, whether you store it yourself or send it into USA Curling, that would be perfect. If you're an individual and you're involved in an incident, you need to contact USA Curling immediately. We don't want these claims to just sit out there. And all of a sudden, if we don't know anything about it, we haven't reported the claim in a timely fashion, and they deny coverage. So if you're an individual, you're injured, or you're served with a summons, you need to get that information into us ASAP. So we can get the proper information to the insurance carriers and assign defense counsel if it's a summons. So very important. If somebody at a club, if you do have an incident, you're not sure what happened, you'd be more than happy to, we can take a call, or Steve can take a call to get the proper paperwork in place, and hopefully we never need it. Next slide, please. What does risk management mean? It's really important that we understand, that you guys understand the vital role you play in keeping this program in place. You guys know more about your sport than any underwriter and any insurance administrator. So, we look to you to make sure that you're running a good program. Identify the risks, assessing those risks, taking steps to reduce those risks. All of the above, makes a big difference. We've been very fortunate over the years of having a really good loss history, an outstanding loss history. And our rates have reflected that. And, everybody reads the paper and everybody knows what other NGBs are going through. Some NGBs can't even get insurance. It's tough out there. So the more you can do to make your sport safe helps us immensely to make sure that we can get, proper coverages in place, our rates stay in check. And again, we can give you a solid insurance program without, premiums going through the roof. Question and answer, Steve or Eric.
Sorry, I was muted. So briefly on this last slide, risk management at the club, what does it look like? Obviously, before your open houses, before those participants even hit the ice, you're talking about, how to be safe on the ice. You're utilizing USCA certified instructors and things like that. One thing too, Greg, maybe touch on the waivers. We get often the question, does it have to be a written waiver or a signed waiver? Can it be a digital waiver? And there's a couple different options for waivers, correct?
You are correct. And yes, I did miss that. Waivers are most important. You never know if they're going to hold water, but nevertheless, you should have them in place. And a digital waiver is fine. A regular signed waiver is fine. And, they don't have to be individual waivers. So if you have a learn to curl and you have a bunch of people coming in, you could say, here's a sheet of paper and here's where you print your name. Here's where you sign your name. It can be on one sheet as long as there's a disclaimer on that sheet of paper that says, that's part of your waiver, and away you go. So it doesn't have to be individual, but really important that we have these waivers in place.
So that does bring us to the Q&A, and there was a couple more that I haven't seen up here.
One question, Greg, that Arthur brought up here, our participant legal liability, would it cover a learn to curl participant if there's a suit from that person against the club if he gets hurt while curling? I think the answer is yes, but if you want to explain that further.
Yeah, that's correct. The answer is yes. Yeah, they're classified as a member, so they'd have participant legal liability. Or we'd have participant legal liability, so that would be in place for
so the club would have protection there.
the club. Yep.
Yeah, good. Another question that came up was the number of times a non-member can curl and still have protection under our policies if they're still not a USCA member. So if they come out to a learn to curl, we're going to say, okay, that person is covered as if they were a member. But I think, Greg, and confirm this if I'm wrong, if they were to come back multiple times and play in a league or play in some open ice, then it sort of jumps into that next category. Then if they're a member, then they're covered. And if they're not a member, then they wouldn't have those membership rights. Is that correct?
Yeah. That's correct. I mean, we don't want people to take advantage of this. This is learn to curl is learn to curl. And, I think in years past, we said, well, 4 or 5, 6 times, that was somewhat of a number. But again, you don't want this person in leagues or in bondsfields and providing them with the same coverage that somebody has as a member that paid for it. It's not fair and it's not right. So, it'd be we're looking to the clubs to check on these people to make sure that they understand that. And if they want to learn to curl and they like to curl, then you become a member and then you get the member benefits.
Very good. Hope that answered your question, Thomas. And then Jeremy came back with a follow-up question of, in order to continue our enrollment, do we need to submit our roster before the end of November? The answer would be no. If you're already a club, and I touched on this very early in the call here, is if you're already a member club in good standing, or you're automatically going to have the benefits of our policies that are in place. We would like to get your rosters in as soon as possible. Hopefully not wait until the very end of January. We'd love to get your rosters as soon as possible. That way we can update our system. We can get you updated with the current membership dues and all of that. But regardless of that, you are still going to be enrolled and currently active within our insurance program right away.
I'll just add on that too. I can't remember what club you're at, Jeremy, but so you could be one of the buckets where this used to be an opt-in program for USA Curling. And we had about 60 clubs that did opt in. This is the same program, just nationally available through dues. But because of that, it's if you're one of those, it's just a matter of getting your roster in. There's another bucket that is up for renewal in December. And so they would obviously have coverage through then, but they also are a USCA member club as well. So they could easily just, roll over and save that right off the top as well. And then there's the bucket that Greg and I and Eric talked about. It's the one that says, well, we already have coverage, we're good. And yes, you might have general liability coverage, but you probably don't have participant accident, probably don't have participant legal liability. So it's great that you have general liability, but this obviously complements and better coverage for your individual members on the ice. Lots more questions up there, huh, Eric?
I hope that answers it, Jeremy. And listen, we're always available as well, even after this call. This is going to be recorded too, so you can access it after if you need to pull up anything there. But I think we do have another one here from Thomas. How is our coverage coordinated with other secondary insurance? Like if the club has coverage under GNCC insurance as well.
And I touched on that a little bit. That's the bucket that comes up for renewal in December. As a USCA member club, the general liability exists for that club. What they really want to do is just send in their roster as soon as possible. And then their individual league members would have the participant accident coverage right off the bat without additional cost.
You can always, there's another question about rosters. If you want to get in an early roster and then you want to wait and send in a secondary roster later in January to capture any other members that may have joined after your first submission, we can always manage that on our end, no problem at all. So, we can account for those couple members or hopefully a lot of members that continue to enroll at your local club. And then we'll collect on an ongoing basis.
Becky asks, if we opted out before, does the club need to opt in? I think the answer to that is no. There used to be an opt-in when this was when it was an opt-in program, but now it's the straight member benefit that we worked hard to offer to our membership. Member benefits with teeth, I guess we would call it.
I think when we say a club in good standing would be one that last year submitted a roster, paid their dues for their members and all that, right? We would say that club is in good standing, whether they opted in or opted out of last year's optional insurance. If you're a club in good standing who paid dues last year, we'll consider you a club in good standing this year. Get us your roster, we'll get it updated, but right away you'll be able to participate in our coverage.
Right. And I'll touch to part of that good standing falls to compliance with the U.S. Center for Safe Sport Education Training, obviously. So all club board members, executive staff, would be required to keep up with their U.S. Center for Safe Sport Education, which is very easy to do. If anyone needs help with that, you can contact me directly.
Michael asked a question regarding the difference between general liability and participant accident insurance. So, right, your general liability is really to protect the club for the most part. Participant accident insurance will be there to protect the member. Greg, that's pretty general, right?
Yeah, but the liability will also follow the member as well. So, we've had cases where somebody said that, hey, this guy, pushed me down or said some negative about me, slander or whatever, and I'm going to sue that individual. So that liability policy would follow the member as well as the club. And the accident insurance is specific for, accident injuries to USA curling members.
Greg, this is a question that we get a lot, and it goes to duplicate coverage, basically. The ones who say, we have coverage already, and you have, I forget the term you've used, but these are written in a certain way nowadays that insurance companies understand that there's probably a good chance there is going to be another policy in play, right?
Yeah, there could be, there could be multiple policies or two policies to respond to a particular claim. There's probably nothing wrong with that if it's part of a package that you already have and they don't want the liability taken out of that package. And you may have liability at the club level under that policy, and you may have liability coverage under the master policy that under USA Curling. Now, if there's a claim, both parties, both insurance companies will look at that claim and they'll battle it out on who's going to pay what and so on and so forth. So, we're trying to somewhat eliminate that to make sure that, if the USA Curling policy can provide what we think you need. But if you have a business owner's policy that the liability can't be taken out, then obviously you're going to have to live with that policy because you need your property and contents covered as well. But if it can be taken out, you'll have the liability coverage under the master policy. And that could be a savings of thousands of dollars. And then you can continue with your property and content policy. And it's a win-win for everyone.
Exactly, Greg. So Thomas, just to follow up on that, if there is an incident and it affects general liability and you have two coverages in place, you'd have to report it to both because either one of them is going to come back and ask you, do you have any other coverage that could help cover this claim as well? So you would report it to both and then let the insurance company sort it out between how it gets split in terms of covering that.
So I'll just touch on maybe a little explanation. So clubs that were closed last year are in a different bucket a little bit. They weren't required to forward dues, obviously, because they weren't collecting any dues. And in a perfect world, you would kind of like, when your kids play soccer or hockey, you pay your dues. It covers you before you step on the ice. That would be ideal, but we also know that clubs are volunteer run. We also know that registration periods are pretty hectic. Rosters aren't set. So we do give a little grace and understanding to that. But what we would say is if you were closed last year and you're about to start curling here in October, that within a reasonable period of time that, once your roster is set, then that's the period of time that you would forward your dues to us in those rosters. And then you could obviously supplement it along the way.
So if you've got a member that's signed up after you've submitted that original roster, we have the ability and leeway there to be like, okay, well, you're going to submit a supplementary roster, a month later or in January or whatever. That member is still covered under these policies. That's just a timing issue between submitting the rosters to us. We don't submit those names on to the insurance carrier. We keep that all in our internal membership system. Anything else? Anything we missed?
I'm trying to understand Becky's, I guess, Eric, on the last question submitted. It must be a follow-up, I guess.
I don't know. Maybe we could take that one offline if she wants to send us a note just to make sure we fully understand and can answer her question.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Becky. Apologies, but forward that off to me, and I can get that answered as well.
I don't know. Do you have the ability to let Becky speak on the call right now, or no?
I think we do actually.
If she's
With these
wants
technical
to.
questions here,
Yeah.
participants.
Don't want to put her on the spot, but if she wants to get the answer right now, we've got time to do it.
Where'd she go? There she is. Well, we put her on the spot.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you certainly did. So,
Hi, Becky.
hi. So the question I had was, the term follow the member was about the liability coverage, if the club is covered or if the member's covered and that kind of thing. If a member that has paid the USCA dues goes to another club that maybe hasn't or has different kind of insurance, is that member also covered under the USCA when they go to another club? Or does that not come into play at all? So if I go compete somewhere and am I covered and I get injured, am I also covered with the insurance for the Coyotes Curling Club?
Interesting question.
I can answer that. Is under the policy, there's no exclusion, to curl at a club that's not a member club. So to answer your question, there's nothing under the insurance policy that excludes coverage for a member curling at a club that's not a USA curling club.
Gotcha.
And that's under the accident policy. Now, if a USA Curling tightens their rules or regulations, says we want you to curl at clubs, that will be something that they can address down the road. Or if it's, and maybe be in their bylaw. I don't think it's in any bylaws now. But, we're, the coverage under the participant accident policy does not exclude anybody going to a club that's not a USA Curling club.
Does that help, Becky?
Yeah, that doesn't obviously cover Canada or if you're going and competing in Canada or anything like that, correct?
No, well, if the liability wise, suit has to be brought in the US. And most of the time, if someone goes to a Canadian club to curl and they're injured, they're not going to have their surgery in a foreign country. They're going to come back here to get whatever they get done, see their own personal doctor. And that's what we've seen over the years under different NGBs. A lot of NGBs travel, worldwide, and they get hurt all the time, but they never have surgeries done in the foreign countries. They'll come back here and get everything taken care of here.
Thank you.
And it would,
Thanks, Becky. Thanks for jumping on and joining our panel. Ryan Olson asked a question earlier. I saw that, and he just reiterated that question again now. And Greg, this one I'll turn to you, is what if a facility is currently using a waiver of liability? What's the best way to explain the benefit of this insurance versus that waiver?
Well, I don't quite understand the question. If they're using a waiver of liability, just using a waiver alone, is that what he means?
I think so.
I mean, if they're, if the facility has a waiver and the club has a waiver, the facility, that's okay, I guess. As long as the facility knows that, hey, they probably have different events at that facility, so they're using a waiver that's, that can probably gather all their events. But if they understand that, if the curling club rents ice and they have a specific waiver just for curling, it might be duplicated, but it's okay if that's what they're asking.
Yeah, I don't know if we answered it for Ryan or not, but again, Ryan, you can always follow up with us as well. And we can make sure we answer it to the full extent.
Well, I think we exhausted our Q&A. At least for now. I'm sure we'll get our inboxes filled shortly.
Good. Like I said, this seminar will be up and available for anyone to pull it up afterwards. We're going to get the ability to apply for a certificate of insurance on our website. Steve's working on that right now. And if you have any other follow-up questions, you've got our contacts, and we will circle up and make sure we get back to you promptly. Otherwise, I think that's it for today. Steve?
I think so. Any final thoughts, Greg?
No, we understand that, insurance can be confusing at best. So, again, if anybody has any questions, please contact Derek or Steve, and then we can discuss and get you the answers that you require. And that's it from our end.
Best part is that people are talking about insurance, which means people are curling on the ice. And so that's a really big step this year versus last year.
Definitely. Well, thanks again for everyone joining us here on a Saturday from your today, the risk management team at USA Curling. We wish you all a wonderful rest of your day. We also have one more webinar today at 4 with Dean Gemmel, Icebreakers, and then we have another one tomorrow morning at 10:30 Central. These times are the ISS Ice Grid system. So if you're so inclined, we'll see you then. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.